My lobster ain't got it back yet. Lobster's a 10, I haven't told you grab it.
This video is brought to you by T-Blocks. Enjoy the content now, but stay for the shilling later. Welcome to Lobster Magnets Review, the channel, the review. I'm here with my buddy, Absolutely No One, and we are here to talk about Uber Invasion Issue 10. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting beast. I love to give these like solo reviews a little bit more love and tender and TLC than I do some of the other things I do, just because I love Uber and I love the fact that I'm like convincing more people to, you know, go out and check it out, given the fact that I'm the only, pretty confident I'm the only YouTuber who is like covering this comic actively, given it's my favorite thing in the world. But unfortunately, for whatever weird reason, Uber Invasion hasn't been released digitally yet. I don't know why, because like I'm always like looking at like the comic book release dates to like figure out when the next issue is out, because as you know, I love Uber. My only regret of reading a new issue is that the issue's over and I have to wait a month or 2 months or 2.5 months. It's never really consistent, because I think issue 11 isn't coming out till February. I hope that's wrong, because a lot of the times I look up the covers and I see that like a lot of the times I look up the covers and I see that like or the cover dates, and it's like for the, like the special edition variant covers, and those dates are a little later than like the regular covers. So every now and then it'll catch me off guard. Like this week's caught me off guard, but where I saw like one release date was like, you know, December 10th, 6th, but then it hadn't come out digitally, so I called my local comic book shop. Hey, you got an Uber Invasion? Yeah, and they're like, yeah, we only got one more copy left. And I'm like, reserve that for me. And I did one of the things I very rarely do. I drove out immediately to my local comic book shop so I could purchase issue 10 of Uber Invasion. And I went off to a Burger King and got cheap McNuggets, and I consumed the hell out of them while reading my Uber goodness. And issue 10 of the Uber Invasion was a good chapter. Basically, this is sort of like the final payoff we've been waiting for in terms of like finding out what the Zephyr, what the results of the Zephyr's successful deployment against the German battleship was, and it was a pretty good payoff. Just to note, though, for this video, you know, since it's not out digitally, I can't use any images from the comic itself. And, you know, I was thinking about waiting for it, but, you know, instead I'm just gonna go for, like, high-level gameplay of, like, Wolfenstein, you know, the new Colossus, and just use that as the sort of thing that I'll use for my video filler, along with probably Wolfenstein music, because that'll, you know, fill the ticket for, you know, giving you some sort of visual stimuli as I go through my favorite World War II alternate Nazi piece of fiction. But this was a very good chapter. Basically, we get to see, like, you know, the sort of German heavy tank man who went into the battlefield afterwards, and his experience of, like, recovering the corpse of one of the Zephyrs, you know, reporting it to the general in the field. As, you know, Germany finally is put into the position where they don't know anything, and they have to, like, put the pieces together about the information. You know, they're scared shitless. Like, you know, he's able to deduct the fact that, like, you know, it's probably a, you know, 2-stage build, a regular Panzermensch build, and that, you know, obviously the Americans wouldn't risk a destroyer or cruiser level candidate for something that they have no idea what can do. And he comes to the horrible realization that, you know, that they can build hundreds of them. They will build hundreds of them. And, you know, Germany's position is now untenable. They have like a 30-day time limit until America can get the next batch of Zephyrs. So basically, you know, they just have to do much destruction as possible, or either surrender or die, and that's the only two options they have left. Oh man, I hate being stuffed up. I hate this time of the year. Stupid nose. Maybe I'll hopefully be able to delete the sniffles out of this. So yeah, basically Germany is in this situation where they, you know, have to do as much damage as possible or come up with a solution. And it's interesting. This chapter, for the first time, well, in addition with the chapter 9, kind of shows us a little bit of the end game of Uber. Like, Kieron Gillen's implying that, like, he's got, like, maybe 7 or 8 issues before, like, the war wraps up. Even though, you know, I personally would love, like, a post-Uber comic about describing about, like, the overall effects on the world economy. Now that they have this new superhuman technology, and, like, what happens when all the Ubers have to go home and become civilians. You know, and they've got all their horrible PTSD. Like, how does the world rebuild now that it has this, like, wonder technology post-war? But, well, who knows if we'll ever get to see that. But to me, that would be almost as interesting as the actual story itself. But, yeah, America finally has an advantage, and we learn a little bit about their ultimate plan, that, like, Germany's going to keep trudging through and destroying stuff because they know that they've got a time limit, but now they know fear. And we have a great scene where, like, they show Sigmund, you know, destroy, like, a base, and then he's like, you know, oh god, please no, as he's, like, afraid the Zephyrs are going to come and, like, cut his throat, and, you know, do all kinds of, like, other nasty stuff to him. So for the very first time, a battleship knows fear. They know fear. It's almost like Starship Troopers, if you've ever seen that, where, you know, they capture the brain bug, and then Neil Patrick Harris says, you know, proudly, you know, it's afraid, and everyone cheers. You know, this is the first time the Germans have known fear. Whatchamacallit, also the two African-American battleships, good old Vernon and his little disabled brother, they get a nice heroic moment where they have a scene where the general's, like, telling them, like, you know, liquidate the Japanese internment camps. But they refuse to because they're good old moral boys. And then there's a great scene where you see Yamato hiding underground. And Kieron, oh god, this is the kind of scene that would be, like, perfect to see in an Uber TV show, where he's just, like, hiding underground, and you're, like, really tense, or it's like, oh my god, attack, you know, he's gonna screw your shit up, you're not powered, you need to get the first strike advantage, oh Jesus Christ. And then it turns out he's, like, 70 miles away, while they're, like, you know, being put under pressure to, like, kill him. Or at least liquidize the village, but they ultimately take the heroic choice. In the last page, we're revealed that he's, like, you know, he's somewhere far away, and there's this great panel where it's like, Vernon says, "It's America! There's enough room for everyone to hide!" Which was just a great little moment. So, honestly, though, the interesting thing, though, is that, like, you know, towards the end of the chapter, it's revealed that, the atomic bomb, you know, the America's atomic bomb, which is like the Chekhov's gun, we're waiting to see how Kieron Gillen fires it. And, you know, the plan is to, like, use the Colossus again to lure the Germans in and then just nuke all of them. And who knows, that could be the way they finally end the Germans' invasion force and get rid of Sigmund. It'll be interesting to see if he can survive a nuclear blast. Honestly, what I thought Kieron was going to do is that, like, they were going to use the nuclear bomb to deal with the Japanese battleship. But it looks like that might not be the case, though. But it'll be interesting. He said that, like, this issue is, like, part of a setup payoff that he's planning. And Uber does a lot of that, where they'll have one chapter to set up the circumstances, and then the next chapter is usually an amazing payoff. So who knows? Maybe chapter 11 will be as good as 7, and we'll finally get to see, you know, the German invasion force get their just desserts. But he has been implying that, like, you know, they're starting to get a little worn down. There's, like, casualties. They've lost one of their, you know, upper-class battleships, which was, you know, the main thing that made them so devastating. We don't know if they have any cruisers or destroyers amongst them. It seems like it's mostly, like, you know, Blitzmensch and lower classes. So I'm very curious about the next chapter and, like, what happens if Razor is able to survive. Although it's so frustrating, though. It's like, you know, like, you know, like a few issues, you know, Hideki gets to become a Yamato, the battleship Yamato, and Razor still isn't, like, full battleship capacity. It feels like, you know, they introduced Razor back in the Okinawa issue, back in issue 6 or 7, and then he's, like, a battleship candidate. It takes 20 issues to get his ass to America, and, like, it's just kind of ridiculous how much time it's taking to, like, get this guy up to full capacity, when it feels like, you know, the Germans and the, well, I guess the Japanese get a battleship between, like, 3 or 4 issues, which is frustrating. I would love to know, like, how many loads he has, or, you know, it also confuses me, like, why are they so uncertain when that, like, you know, I guess they don't have the information, that America doesn't have the information, that, like, you know, from what we've seen, developing a battleship, all you do is just keep on sticking them with the catalyst till they're done. That's what worked well with Maria when she wasn't fully developed. It also worked well with Hideki when he wasn't fully developed. They were able to, like, keep on sticking them and continue the development. But it's like, come on, Stephanie, you figured out the Zephyr code. Why can't you figure out that you can just, like, keep on, you know, sticking crystals in Colossus before or after you know, your activation to get them up to full speed. But it was definitely a very cathartic chapter to see, like, Germany afraid once, and now they're more desperate than ever because, you know, all they have is surrender or death. And will they even surrender, or will the American people accept a surrender, or will they just be executed on the spot, given how much damage and untold death and destruction they've caused throughout America? I mean, they burned Boston, they burned Maryland, they burned freaking San Francisco. Well, technically Hideki did San Francisco and San Diego, but you know, they've been cutting a bloody swath across the country. So I can't imagine people are, you know, super you know, would accept it. Although it'd be interesting to see what they try and do to like if Sigmund's just like, screw it, I want to live, and he surrenders. You know, what are they going to do to hold him? I guess they just have to hope, like Superman, you know, that he is a good behavior and doesn't try to escape, and he just sort of like accepts his fate. Who knows? Maybe like the final chapter, we'll see Sigmund, like, you know, be charged with crimes against humanity, and then he'll be sentenced to death. But they have to figure out how to kill him, and all they can do is like strap him down and like use an industrial drill to euthanize him, because that's all they have. Or who knows? It'll be interesting to see if, like, you know, the Germans, you know, let's say the Germans do surrender, and, you know, they get death by firing squad, and death by firing squad is basically like, you know, Ubers using their halos and, you know, disintegrating them, and that's how they sort of, that's the only way you can execute them, and that'd be an interesting panel. But this was definitely a good payoff, and I did love the whole thing with the ghost Zephyrs used as a way to, like, scare the Germans off for fear that they might, you know, of course, be slaughtered. And I'm really excited to see what happens when more Zephyrs are ready, and, you know, what Germany tries to do to counter them. But, you know, they're scared. They have no idea if it's super speed. They come pretty close to figuring out what the Zephyrs are capable of. But it scares them, and it's nice to see, like, you know, that happening to Germany for a change, as opposed to, you know, the poor allies being forced to take up the brunt of their, you know, enhanced human advantage. Although it's implied that, you know, before this ends, Germany's got one more ace up their sleeve, Project Gutenrang, or whatever the heck it was pronounced, back in issue 1 of Uber Invasion, where he talks about how, you know, the best way to use the tank men is to use them as, like, walking atomic bombs, where they just set fire to everything and cause a swath of destruction. But, you know, there's one final thing that Germany's preparing, but we probably won't hear about it till issue 12. If I had to guess what Kieron Gillen's going to happen is we're going to have a really cool epic scene where Razor leads the German forces into a trap, and then, you know, they get nuked, and then we get to see the horrible aftermath of what nuclear weapons do to, like, enhanced human bodies, and they're, like, still alive and kind of, like, being melted with all their skin turned off in eternal agony. And who knows, maybe it'll become, like, this war monument, the living war monument, with, like, all the, like, freaking Germans, like, melted into the, you know, concrete or the dirt or whatever, and they're still alive, and people keep it you know, as a monument to this day, to the lives lost, or something like that. That's resolved once, and that's resolved, assumingly, in issue, you know, 11. Then 12 will go back to Germany. He said that we're seeing Sieglinde and seeing how she's doing, and then we'll get to see what Germany's master plan is, since the noose seems to be going, you know, growing ever tighter. Patton secured the passage. It's looking like the Soviets are gearing up for a new assault, and by this time, you know, as far as we know, everyone in Maria's camp is a battleship candidate. So, you know, hypothetically, they might have, like, you know, 10 battleships. That would be really badass if, like, you know, they show that, like, Maria's penal colony has, like, produced, like, 10 Soviet battleships, and then they all come marching along ready to, like, decimate everything. But then it turns out that Germany unleashes whatever their final project is, Project Gutenrang, and what that's capable of. I'm excited, because it definitely does feel like, you know, the noose is closing down. Patton's controlling the, you know, Italy, Alps. Soviets are closing in, and assumingly Germany's war-ravaged state does not have the resources to muster the enhanced human manpower to, like, fight them off. So, you know, it looks like Uber's going to wrap up, and Kieron Gillen's determined to give us that payoff and wrap up and finish this off after, God, writing this back in 2008. And you know, it's been a good ride. Uber's hands down still my favorite thing of anything right now, and I freaking love the comic, and it's great, and I can't wait to see how he ends it. And, you know, I'll always keep my fingers crossed that we get a Uber television series on HBO. Probably won't happen. I mean, the problem is that Uber will be an exceptionally expensive series to produce. Maybe if it was animated, that might be possible. But who knows? The world is desperate for the next Game of Thrones, and I, you know, definitely think Uber, you know, hits on those marks. So I give this issue a good old solid 8. There was a lot of good payoff that we've been waiting to learn about the consequences of the Zephyrs, and it gave it to us. So it was good. Good time. I can't wait for the next one. I just hate the fact that I'm going to have to wait a few months for it. So, check out T-Blocks in the commercial after this. And remember, lobsters and tennis, don't you grab it. Do you like clothes but hate shopping? Then T-Blocks is the subscription service for you. But I know what you're thinking. But Lobster, how is that any different than Loot Crate or the other subscription services? Well, T-Blocks sends you t-shirts, which is clothing, which is actually useful, unlike the useless swag junk that Loot Crate keeps peddling on gullible schmucks. And this isn't just knockoff brand crap. T-Blocks hooks you up with licensed shirts for all the stuff you love, because you need clothes. How else are you going to keep your puny human man flesh protected from the elements? T-shirts are useful for any occasion. Wear them, give them to friends, give them to enemies, knit them together, make a quilt. T-shirts are life. And you know the best part? It'll only cost you $6.99. That's right, you can get 12 shirts sent to you for once a month for only $6.99. And you know what? If ultra cheap licensed goods are too basic for you, then there's also the Community T-Block set, which features original designs from the best up-and-coming artists, so you can keep that hipster street cred. But I'm here to save you even more money! Use the code LOBSTERTBX at checkout, and you'll save 10% on any order. Be a t-shirt wearing god amongst mortals. Use the power of the most expensive seafood to get you the cheapest t-shirts now!